I realized something was wrong when the reflection didn't do what I expected. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden movement, no obvious distortion, just a delay so small that, at first, I assumed it was my eyes adjusting to the light. I was standing in the laundry room, holding a folded shirt, facing the narrow mirror mounted above the utility sink. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the dryer behind me. The mirror was old, the edges slightly warped, the glass faintly clouded in places where years of steam had settled in. I lifted my hand to scratch the side of my neck. In the reflection, my hand followed. Just not immediately. The delay couldn't have been more than a fraction of a second, barely enough to register, but it was enough that my stomach tightened before my mind had time to explain it away. I stood very still, my hand frozen against my skin. The reflection held the pose. I lowered my arm. The reflection did the same. Everything looked normal again. I told myself mirrors do strange things sometimes. Old glass, bad lighting, fatigue. I'd worked late that night, later than usual, and the house had that end-of-day stillness that made small things feel larger than they were. I finished folding the laundry and carried it down the hallway to the bedroom. The house creaked softly as I walked, the familiar sounds of wood settling and pipes cooling. I moved through the space without really seeing it, my thoughts already drifting towards sleep. That night I dreamed I was standing in front of the same mirror. Only this time, the reflection didn't move at all. I woke up just before my alarm, my heart steady, my mouth dry. The dream faded quickly, leaving behind only a vague sense of unease. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sound of traffic outside. By the time I got up, the feeling had mostly passed. My life at the time was uncomplicated. I lived alone in a small rental house on the edge of town, close enough to hear the highway, but far enough that the neighborhood felt quiet after dark. The house was older, built sometime in the 70s with narrow hallways and doors that didn't quite sit straight in their frames. It wasn't charming, but it was affordable, and it suited me. My days followed a predictable pattern: work, commute, dinner, a few hours of television or reading before bed. I didn't have many visitors, I didn't entertain much. I liked the consistency of it. That's why I noticed the mirror again the next evening. I was brushing my teeth, standing in the bathroom with the light buzzing faintly overhead. The mirror above the sink reflected my face clearly enough, though the edges of the glass bowed inward slightly, stretching the space behind me in a way that always made the room feel longer than it was. I leaned closer, inspecting a small cut on my lip. The reflection leaned too, but again, not quite in sync. This time the delay was more noticeable, still subtle, but undeniable. I straightened. The reflection followed a beat later. I stared at myself for a long moment, searching for some sign of distortion. My face looked tired, but otherwise unchanged. Same expression, same posture, same dull bathroom light flattening everything it touched. I raised my hand slowly. The reflection did the same. This time the delay was consistent, predictable, like it was waiting for me to move before deciding to follow. I dropped my arm and stepped back from the sink. The reflection stepped back too, finally matching my movements again. I turned off the light and left the bathroom without looking back. That night I covered the mirror in the bedroom with a towel. I didn't tell myself why, I just did it. Over the next few days I became more aware of reflective surfaces, windows, screens, polished metal, anything that might show me myself, even faintly. I caught my reflection in the microwave door once and felt a brief spike of anxiety before reminding myself that reflections couldn't do anything on their own. They were passive, dependent. At least that's what I believed. The first time I noticed the reflection move when I didn't, I was sitting on the couch. The television was on but muted. I was scrolling through my phone, half watching the movement on the screen. The living room window reflected the interior faintly, just enough that I could see the shape of myself seated on the couch if I looked at the glass from the right angle. I shifted my weight slightly. The reflection shifted too. I stopped moving. The reflection didn't. It was subtle. A small adjustment, a slight tilt of the head. I looked up sharply. The window showed only my own still image, frozen in place. No movement, no delay. I stared at it for a long time, my phone forgotten in my hand. That night I slept poorly again. The dreams were different this time, fragmented, disconnected. I dreamed of rooms I didn't recognize, filled with mirrors placed at odd angles. In every reflection, I could see myself standing still while the world behind me moved. I woke up with a sensation that I'd been watched, not observed, waited on. I started avoiding mirrors altogether after that. I brushed my teeth without looking up. I shaved by feel. I changed clothes with my back to the bedroom mirror, the towel still draped over it. This avoidance should have made things better. It didn't. Instead, I began to notice the absence. There's a strange comfort in seeing yourself reflected, a quiet reassurance that you exist where you think you do. When that's gone, the space feels incomplete, empty in the wrong way. The first sound came a week later. I was lying in bed, the room dark except for the faint glow of the alarm clock. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles in after midnight. I was half asleep, drifting in that space where thoughts lose their edges. That's when I heard movement, not footsteps, something softer, a faint shift like fabric brushing against glass. I lay still, listening. The sound came again, slow, measured. It wasn't coming from the hallway. It wasn't coming from outside. It felt closer than that. I turned my head slightly, my eyes adjusting to the dark. The towel covering the mirror hung motionless. Nothing else in the room moved. I told myself the sound came from the house settling. Old homes made noise at night. That was normal. I rolled onto my side and forced myself to breathe evenly. The sound didn't return. The next morning the towel had slipped, just a little. The bottom corner had fallen away from the mirror, exposing a narrow strip of glass. I stood in the doorway, staring at it. I was certain I'd secured it the night before. I'd checked. I stepped closer and pulled the towel back into place. As I did, my fingers brushed the glass. It was warm, not hot, not cold. Warm in a way that didn't match the rest of the room. I pulled my hand away and stood there for a moment, my heart rate unchanged but my thoughts accelerating. Glass didn't hold heat like that, not without a source. I avoided the bedroom that night. I slept on the couch, the living room windows covered with blankets I didn't normally use. The television stayed on, volume low, the constant murmur of voices helping me pretend I wasn't alone. Sometime after midnight, I became aware of a new sensation. Pressure, not physical contact, just the feeling of something occupying space nearby. The way a room feels smaller when someone else enters it, even if you can't see them. I opened my eyes. The room looked the same as it always did. Couch, coffee table, blanketed windows. But the television screen was dark. I was sure I'd left it on. I sat up slowly, listening. The pressure didn't go away. It felt concentrated, focused, toward the window directly across from me. The blanket covering it was still, but the air around it felt different, thicker, charged. I watched it for a long time. Nothing happened. Eventually, exhaustion won. When I woke up in the morning, the blanket had been pulled aside, just enough to reveal the glass. I stood there staring at my own reflection, framed by the edges of the window. It stared back, perfectly still. I didn't move. Neither did it. But I had the unmistakable sense that it was aware of me in a way it hadn't been before, like it had been waiting for me to notice. Same voice, same calm tone, no recap. I didn't move away from the window right away. I stood there longer than made sense, staring at my own reflection as if it might change if I gave it enough time. The glass showed me exactly what I expected to see. My face, pale in the morning light, eyes slightly shadowed from lack of sleep, hair flattened on one side. Nothing about it looked wrong. That was the problem. There was no delay anymore. No hesitation, no subtle lag like before. It matched me perfectly. I stepped back. The reflection stepped back at the same time. I lifted my hand. So did it. I lowered it. So did it. Everything was synchronized now in a way it hadn't been before. Too precise, too immediate, like whatever mechanism had been causing the delay had corrected itself. I covered the window again and turned away. The rest of that day passed in a dull blur. I went through my routine without thinking much about it. Work emails, phone calls, lunch eaten at my desk, conversations that didn't quite register. I nodded when I was supposed to, responded when someone addressed me directly. All the while, a part of my attention stayed fixed somewhere else, on the mirrors. I noticed them everywhere after that, not just in my house, but in places I'd never thought twice about before. The reflective surface of a parked car, a storefront window as I passed by, the dark screen of my phone when it timed out. Each time I caught my reflection and felt a brief, sharp awareness settle in my chest. Each time, it behaved. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't, because now I was aware of something else. The reflections weren't just reacting to me anymore. They were anticipating me. I noticed it that evening while washing my hands. I'd gone back into the bathroom reluctantly, telling myself I couldn't avoid mirrors forever. The towel was still draped over the bedroom mirror, but the bathroom one remained uncovered. I told myself it was different, smaller, less important. I turned on the tap and let the water run warm, watching my hands beneath the stream. Steam began to fog the mirror slightly, softening the edges of my reflection. I reached for the soap. In the mirror, my hand moved before I felt myself move it, just slightly, enough that my breath caught before I could stop it. I froze. The reflection froze too. My hand was still hovering over the soap dispenser, in both places. I waited. Nothing changed. The moment passed, leaving behind a dull pressure behind my eyes. I finished washing my hands without looking up again. That night I sat on the couch with the lights off, the house illuminated only by the dim glow of the streetlights outside. I didn't turn the television on. I didn't want the distraction. I wanted to know if the feeling was still there when everything else was quiet. It was. The pressure returned slowly, settling into the room like a weight, not directional this time, not tied to a specific window or mirror, just a sense of presence that made the air feel occupied. I sat still, my hands resting on my knees, my breathing slow and even. I thought about all the rational explanations: stress, sleep deprivation, anxiety, the way the mind fills in gaps when it expects something to be there. But there was something else underneath those thoughts, a pattern. The delays had stopped. The synchronization had improved. Whatever was happening wasn't escalating randomly. It was adjusting. I went to bed early, more tired than I'd been in days. I left the towel over the bedroom mirror, covered the bathroom one too, using a spare sheet I found in the closet. I closed the blinds in every room. The house felt sealed. I lay on my back in the dark, staring at the ceiling, waiting. At some point, I realized I was no longer alone with my thoughts. It wasn't a sound that tipped me off. It was the sense of attention, the feeling you get when someone stands too close behind you, even if they don't touch you. I didn't turn my head. I didn't open my eyes. I listened. The room was silent, but I could feel it, centered near the foot of the bed, not moving, not approaching, just present. I focused on my breathing, keeping it slow and steady. I didn't want to give it any indication that I was aware of it. I didn't know why I felt that mattered. It just did. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me under. When I woke up, the room was empty. The bed was undisturbed, the sheets smooth except where I'd been lying. The air felt normal again, unpressurized. I told myself I'd dreamed it. I had to. That morning, I found the sheet on the bathroom floor. It had been pulled down from the mirror. I stood in the doorway, staring at the exposed glass. My reflection stared back. There was something different about it now. Not in appearance, in posture. It stood the way I stood, but it didn't feel passive anymore. It felt alert. I brushed my teeth without looking up, then left the room and closed the door behind me. Over the next few days, the boundary between reflection and reality began to blur in small, unsettling ways. I'd catch movement out of the corner of my eye, turn, and find nothing. I'd feel a shift in the room, like someone adjusting their weight, only to realize I was alone. The mirrors remained cooperative. They reflected me perfectly, immediately, too immediately. One evening, I tested something. I stood in front of the bedroom mirror, the towel removed for the first time in days. The room was quiet. The air felt still. I raised my hand halfway. The reflection matched me. I stopped. The reflection stopped. I held the pose, my arm beginning to ache slightly. I lowered my hand very slowly. The reflection lowered its hand at the same pace. Then I did something I hadn't planned.